Hello all and welcome to the Indie Crew channel. I'm your host Ghost Waffles and today we're going to be taking a look at an intriguing little game known as Lights On. It was developed by Fanimator and you can find it on PC free of charge. I was first introduced to the game when me and a friend were on a call. He suggested for me to play the game since he was friends with the developer, and ever since I played it, I was hooked. Lights On is a rather simple game where you play as a thief and you're tasked with invading some guy's luminal space. Also, for the sake of this review, I'm going to be calling this guy Greg because he doesn't have a name, and calling him Greg makes it way easier to talk about. You invade Greg's space by robbing him of these trinkets called riches that are laid out on the many hallways of this maze-like house. To avoid being spotted by Greg, you have to turn the lights off, which creates a spooky atmosphere, but does stop you from getting spotted immediately. However, Greg can turn the lights back on, so you have to stay focused and find the nearest light switch to turn them back off. Something that struck out to me at first with this game was how you could play it in two different ways. You can either play it the way it was intended by constantly turning off the lights, or you can play it my preferred way and keep the lights on to make finding the trinkets much easier. Then when Greg spots you, you head to the nearest light switch and run for the hills. I always like when games give you more than one way to solve a problem, and this game is no exception to that. Every time I load up a new game, I'm always thinking about which of the two strategies I should go for, sometimes even settling for a mix of the two, and this just creates a really fun gameplay loop. Now whilst zooming around the hallways, you have to be careful, as vases are placed in the middle of just about every corridor. Running into these vases will cause them to smash, making a loud noise, which alerts Greg. I think this helps in adding some much needed challenge, so I'd say they're pretty good. However, I can't say this for the bookcases. Like the vases, the bookcases are scattered around the hallways, and if you so desire, you can go ahead and destroy them, which alerts Greg. Now the reason the vases work is because when playing in the dark, you can barely see them, so unless you stick to the sides of the walls, it's inevitable that you'll run into them. In addition to this, the vases break on impact, whereas you have to press a button to destroy the bookcases. So yeah, the bookcases are pretty damn pointless. The only real way I can see someone accidentally destroying them is if they were spamming the button to turn the light switch on, but accidentally ended up destroying a bookcase. But at the same time, the light switches are usually in places that aren't very close to the bookcases. Another mechanic in the game you'll need to be using is that of the phone. By right clicking, you can open up a phone, which will tell you how close you are to the nearest rich. The phone works pretty well, but it does have a tendency to alert you of riches that are behind walls that you can't access, which leads to you having to walk down a series of hallways just to get it. I wouldn't say this is necessarily an issue because on one hand, actually scouting it out was quite entertaining to an extent, but when it came to the end of the game, this did become a mild annoyance. I found both the art style and presentation to be quite charming. The game uses pixel art, but in 3D, which kinda gives it both a Doom and Baldi's Basics aesthetic, which I quite like. The game also has this little running animation, and whilst this was fine at first, after playing the game for a few hours, it made me feel quite sickly, which most games don't manage to make me do. Maybe it was just because I was really tired, but I do just want to warn anyone watching about this. The game only has two songs, one of them being the menu theme and one of them being a chase theme for when Greg begins chasing after you. Both of these songs are actually really well composed. I love the intimidating feeling that the menu theme creates, and I love the sense of dread and terror that the chase theme manages to portray. Now whilst I do feel like ambient noise fits the main game just fine, I think it would have been a bit better if there was actual music. I think a jolly little track would have fitted nicely when the lights are on, just a contrast with Greg chasing after you, and a creepy little ambient song could have been used when the lights were off, which would have really added to the spookiness factor. After you've beaten the main game, there's more content in the form of sex mode, which is basically just a much harder, no pun intended, version of the game. You have 70 riches to collect instead of 50, Greg is much faster now and you can't just outrun him whenever he encounters you, and every time he jump scares you, it looks a little something like this. Now this may be funny to you, but imagine playing this at 1 in the morning with all the lights off and suddenly that noise is blasted down your headphones. I'll be completely honest, that jump scare made me jump out of my seat a lot more than I would like to admit. And that just about wraps up my review of Lights On. I'll be giving this game a review score of 5 out of 10. The game certainly has a lot of flaws, but I do appreciate its originality and its entertaining gameplay. It's one of those fun little games that you can just play for a bit to pass the time, and I appreciate that. If you're still watching, then thanks, it's majorly appreciated. I'd like to give a huge thanks to Silver for the thumbnail art. You can find his socials in the description below. And hey, if you want updates about our videos or just want to chill with some friendly indie game enjoyers, then I'd like to recommend our community Discord server that you can also find below in the description. Thanks for watching and take care.